John Whitmore, seen here at Elands Bay during the mid-1960s, was by all accounts an adventurous man with a devout passion for the sport. So much so that he is today accredited with the discovery of many surf breaks along South Africa's southern and west coast. In addition to this, Whitmore was the first surfer in South Africa to own a combi and is said to have invented the roof rack. He was also the first to import surfing magazines and Clark foam blacks for his then burgeoning surfboard manufacturing business, and for good measure was nominated as the first chairman of the South African Surfing Association in 1965. But perhaps the most significant accolade of all, and one that possibly isn't given the recognition it deserves, is the fact that it was he who urged the legendary American filmmaker Bruce Brown to visit Cape St. Francis in August 1963. This, while Brown, along with two young surfers, Robert August and Mike Hinson, were busy searching for the most perfect wave on the planet during the making of the epic surf film Endless Summer.
It sounded like it was just this dream place that, and at the time, to find a wave like that was just almost unheard of. Now, there's, they found great surf spots all around the world. But at the time, I mean, almost everywhere you went, you'd find some mushburger wave, or you never found a really as good a wave as we already knew about in Hawaii or California. And here was this great wave. And people now go, well, what about J Bay? Well, first of all, we didn't know about it. Nobody knew about it. And I don't think it was until a couple years later that Whitmore was driving by, going somewhere, and he looked out and saw saw that wave. But it strikes me funny now, guys go, well, should have gone to J Bay.
Warm water and a myriad of hollow sand-bottom beach breaks soon became regarded as the surf mecca of South Africa, and by the early to mid-60s had churned out the nucleus of South Africa's top surfers, many of whom would go on to establish a lasting relationship with Jeffreys Bay. One such surfer is Mike Ginsberg. Mike reminisces about his first visit to Jeffreys some 44 years ago.
In 1967, Errol Hickman and Spider Murphy and myself, we came down to Seal Point. We didn't even, we may have heard about J Bay, I'm not too sure, but we went to Seal Point, we didn't come here. And then we spent about a week or two at Seal Point, went back home, and then we heard about Jeffreys Bay, okay. And the next year, 1968, Errol, myself, and a guy called, what was his name? I forget about it, he was an Australian guy anyway. And the three of us, we came down to Jeffreys Bay. I remember we arrived in the night time and we found the car, the car park. I don't know how, but we found the car parked there. Woke up in the morning and jumped out of our tent and just saw these waves, and it was just like 45 foot perfect, And I remember checking it out, and just for some reason I passed out, I just fainted, And Errol and this Australian guy, they just threw me in the tent and went surfing, and they were out there. I woke up about 2 hours later, just sweating from my tent, and saw these guys, and I was out there. So that was my experience with Jeffreys Bay, my first time. And I think we were the only guys there, for 10 days we were the only guys surfing.
During the early to mid-1960s, a group of teenagers became regular visitors to the small town. They would go on to become four of South Africa's greatest ever surfers.
I'll try and set my soul free. We are snow.
Donald Paarman represented South Africa at 3 consecutive World Championship events. He, along with brother Jonathan, a real standout at Super Tubes and a true legend of the sport, first visited J Bay in 1965. While Gavin Rudolph, regarded in some quarters to be the first to venture out at supertubes, went on to become the World Pro-Am champion in 1971. The fourth member of the group, the nuggety Rhodesian-born Pittard, also a fearless big-wave rider, earned the title of Mr. J-Bay at the height of his career in the mid-1970s.
Beside you, I have come here to lose the smog.
Yeah, when we first got here, didn't surf anywhere up here at Supers or anything. We all sat down at the point there and met all the guys from PE. We stayed here for a week. And we thought we had it to ourselves, and as soon as the west started blowing, all of a sudden, like cockroaches, the mob came from P, Gavin and Mushhide and late Buddha Horn, and those guys came out and got to know them and had a jaw, just surfing the point and tubes.
There was nothing here. It was just a paradise to go camp out and surf and live in the bush. But nobody lived here until 1970 odd.
There wasn't any accommodation, there wasn't any ablutions anywhere. A couple of Australians pulled in and lived like burgies on the dunes. We pulled in and stayed in our combis and, you know, wherever we could, we did what we could, but you could put up with any discomfort in the surf squad.
Riding shotgun.
With the lineup becoming increasingly crowded, we asked peers about the vibe in the water.
Like a brotherhood really, and didn't have any hassles or anything. The odd Australian came here, the guy, this odd Australian that could surf was very welcome. A couple that were bullshit and dropped in and that sort of thing, they got yodeled out of here. But look, the early days, the guys had a magic time here. It was really a lekker time. But obviously when it got popular and got crowded, things started getting a bit hectic now and again. But if you knew where to take off and you paddled in, you could still get your waves relatively easily. There was plenty of waves for everyone. But if you hustled and you dropped in and that sort of thing, they didn't like that. So it was odd punch thrown and a couple of oaks got run out of town and that sort of thing. But it happens everywhere in the world, and it gets crowded.
A lot of clandestine activity took place on these dunes during the late 1960s, a factor that ultimately deepened the rift between the surfers, authorities, and the local townsfolk.
68, I think it was, the Americans arrived in town, roaring with their flipping Land Rover on the beach, cameras mounted on top. Tim and Mary Kramer, they did the first article on Jeffrey's Bay, exposing the place. Maxie Wetland said, hey, you people are making this place look like a Vietnam battleground with all the tire tracks on the beach. But then there was quite a crew of them, doing yoga, chanting Aum, and fasting. Never heard of fasting, really. And eating smoothies, beautiful fruit smoothies. Lovely. They rented a house, a White House, up above magnitudes. And according to Nat Young in his book, History of Surfing, some of these Americans were part of the Brotherhood of Eternal Light.
They actually had the hallucinogenic drugs. They introduced us to those things. LSD, L25, psilocybin, and there was something else that they had, that they used to actually sell to us.
A little bit longer, every year. Picking up the odd shell, picking up the odd oyster. You could do good bartering with oysters. Nothing wrong with an oyster or two.
Bruce is not known for his contribution to the economy, but then how does he survive?
Jeffrey's Bay, every day is different. I've got a new little project on the go at the moment. A friend of mine lives in Spain. He's got a lovely house with a sea view and a garden that was in a shocking state of rubble and boulder disrepair. And I put in a whole lot of agave aloes for him which shoot up a lovely big stalk, and we can make wooden surfboards out of them. And I've got carried away and put a whole lot of succulents in, so I'm a bit of a landscape artist at the moment, not to say garden boy, you know. And otherwise it depends on the surf. Don't feel like surfing. I've been out the water about 10 days now, but of skin cancer problems. Watch out for the sun, there's atom bombs going off there, I kid you not.
Surfing the might of super tubes requires a healthy body.
Hey, you gotta try and get your own tap water somewhere. Distilled water, the best. Well, apart from carrot juice, juices from fruit and veggies. And then they've got this reverse osmosis process now, filtering the water. It's the way to go, reverse osmosis. In fact, it costs a little bit more than a flipping water, what's that word, distilled water, which is the way to go. So that's the thing, good health, watch out for the sun, don't get skin cancer, and eat lots of raw food. A equals B, give us a gap. All the creatures eat their food raw. You cook your food, it's not so alive anymore. Is